Friends, hello and welcome to another very special evening hobby streaming here with us at Hobby Titans. Today, I'm joined by the man who started this entire mess, Mr. Brian Poland. Brian, how's it going?
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. You know, I've been waiting to get on this hobby thing forever. I just never got my invite in the mail. I'm sitting at home, be like, by the phone, it rings.
Yeah.
And it's not you.
It's paper mail,
yeah.
Right? So like I sent it and just...
It got lost in the mail. That's what they kept telling me at least. But now I'm here. I'm finally here.
Brian, they say that faces and bases make a model. What do you think?
I think that could be true if anyone knew how to paint faces.
Nobody knows how to paint faces.
That's nobody.
We don't know how to paint faces.
Nope, you came to the wrong place for faces.
We do know how to paint bases.
Yep.
And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to show you guys how to make 3 different styles of bases. And we're trying to go for things a little more interesting here than usual black rim, brown mud. And so we're going to get into it.
Zach's calling people out. If you got the mud in the rim, throw them in the garbage. We're going to make them so much better today.
We're going to make them more interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
You ready?
I'm so ready.
Let's get creative, guys. Okay, so zoomed in right here on my Simhan Eldar army. Ignore the war walkers. What we're really looking at are the bases.
Yeah, nobody cares about the models.
We're
all here for bases today.
Which are actually kind of weird to get good shots of because of the models on top of them. But this is my
You should have cut all your army off the base.
Popped them
Just
off.
showed the base. Be a purist.
Here we go. Okay, so we're going to start. This is one of the ones I'm going to make. And this guy, these guys are in what I imagine just sort of it's a scouting force, kind of investigating some ancient ruins of their own people, right? These are Eldar ruins, crumbled. I'm going to show you how to make these Eldar ruins nice and easy with a few third-party tools that I love. We got the paper plants. Paper plants, kind of a controversial idea, seems horrible. I had to be talked into it, but so far so good.
I think they look great. I think they really bring this base to life.
They look great. The concern is, can they hold up over time? This is a fairly new army, but so far so good. So we'll talk about the kind of climb-in and idea I had behind where this takes place. And here's my classic first basing pattern here. This is for my T'au army. Here you can see an aerial view of a riptide. That is a riptide, I promise. My T'au are I sort of imagine them in a what I call high tropics or high jungle. A better view here on the missile sides, on these broadsides. So it's a wet area, but it's not a super verdant area. It gets maybe some mist. We live here in California in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Lots of the mountains are actually fed water through ocean convection, through fog. So something like that. Here's a close up here on the Pathfinders. So we're going to show you how to accomplish some basing styles that go a little bit beyond. Here's snow. They're on a snow world, or they're on a Mars world.
Make a more complex environment that tells a bit more of a story, right?
Tells a bit more of a story. Maybe fits with the army a little bit, or the theme of the army. In the case of my T'au are a great army to do this with because, unlike every other army in the 40K, T'au actually are like, hey, we should camo.
That's right. They're one of the few armies that isn't painted bright yellow, on like a rocky moon.
Right. And for the Eldar, the idea is kind of like an investigation team. Investigating.
Really explore their sadness of their dying culture.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Why
Destroy
did this
ancient works of art.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of little steps today. Brian is going to be working on a new base.
Yeah, that's right.
For a new army.
Yeah, that's right. If you've heard, we've got a great marathon streaming event coming up at the end of this week on Friday, right here on Hobby Titans. We're going to be streaming all day, 10 a.m. Pacific time, maybe for about 12 hours. And we're going to start to finish an entirely new army, which is the Gargants, the Sons of Behemoth. So that's the Mega Gargants and Gargants army. So really excited to do that. But we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to get a head start on the bases today because it's a basing episode. Makes perfect sense, right? Perfect sense. And then if you come and join us on Tabletop Titans the next day, we're going to be playing that army. And because the Sons of Behemoth are only a handful of models, they're very detailed, and they're going to take us a lot of the day. We'll probably be in and out painting a bunch of other stuff as well.
Yeah. I really have no idea how long this is going to take.
I have no idea either, but I think we can do it. We're seasoned hobbyists.
Yeah.
We've got some projects done in a jiffy before.
I've timed a few things. I timed the hornets.
Yeah.
I know I can do a hornet in an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know how that translates.
A hornet is like a 3/4 of a giant.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what to do. You know what you're doing?
I do.
Yeah. Let's actually show on the Glam Cam
Okay.
this base, because we haven't actually shown this one yet.
Let's do it. I'll show it. It's over here.
Yeah.
So you can see here, it's kind of a rocky world. It's got a bit of a snowy landscape going on. It's got a little bit of signs of life peeking back through. Maybe it's the start of the thaw, and you can actually see maybe you're picking up a few shiny bits where the snow's melting, creating a little bit of ice in some places. So it's actually a relatively simple base, and we'll show you how to achieve it.
Yep.
But it's also, I think, quite an elegant base. And there's one thing I really like about this base. It's kind of how neutral it is.
Yeah.
And it's going to really allow the model to be the star of the show in this particular case, which is sometimes what you want to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want the base to be forward, but a lot of the time you actually don't.
Yeah, now Bridger and I actually have some exciting plans here, because as the AOS fans know, they're grouped a little differently than 40K. There's
Right.
just like destruction, right?
That's right.
These guys are part of destruction. And so Bridger and I came up with this plan to put these guys here.
Right.
And then I'm going to be starting an army that lives in a little more of a snowy land, which
Right.
is the Beastclaw Raiders.
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to base them almost the same. We're just going to add way more snow.
It's just like more snow.
More snow.
So it's all one unified army.
Right.
Actually, when I first started my Warhammer 40K Imperium army, my first Imperium army was the Salamanders. I did a particular basing on them that actually I carried through into all my Imperium armies for probably my next 2 or 3 armies.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to collect like 14 Imperial armies. It's a little boring to do the same base. So I eventually gave up on it. But I was doing it for a while, the same thing, where I was kind of continuing the story there.
Yeah, I like it. Adrian and I also have chatted about doing it with our Thousand Sons as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to let Brian get going. As he does,
Let's do it.
The first thing I'm going to show you guys is necessary for today. Only a little bit. It's going to be super necessary for Friday when we stream all day. I'm going to show you guys how to make these. And you've seen me use them on the stream before. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Brian. You've seen me use them on the stream before. It's super easy. We did not do a paste bin yet for today's episode, but maybe I will put this information up, what you need to make these. And what are these? These are used basically to airbrush, honestly, to make airbrushing little bits easier. So let me show you the tools involved and how to make this. This is going to be super quick. We're going to use a wine cork. If you drink as much wine as my wife and I do, then you have a million of these.
I can't help you there. I actually don't drink at all.
Yeah.
I've tried a sip of wine in my life, and I was like, it's not for me.
So
And then I never went back.
you have to borrow your wine corks, I guess.
That's right.
From people like
I
Brett.
have to get them knock on your neighbor's doors or something.
Yeah. So it's the wine cork. Mm-hmm. It's wire. I don't know the gauge of this wire. I bought it forever ago, and one roll is going to last you forever.
I have the same thing. I just bought a roll of this wire, and I've never run out of it.
Yep, you need wire cutters. Now, the final tool that I use, different people use different components. You can actually see there's like little ridges in this. This is also from a hardware store, and people use this to seal their windows, apparently.
Amateurs.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been part of this process, but it's window sealant, it's called. And the reason I use window sealant is you get a giant roll. It's not that expensive. And the nice thing about it is, it lasts forever.
Right.
If this stuff gets paint on it, it has that same sort of magical component that Silly Putty has, where
Right.
like you just
roll it and it cracks off.
or
It just
who
disappears.
knows?
It gets
It
absorbed.
just disappears,
Yeah.
right? Like, so it's great, the window sealant. There is one trick to the window sealant I'm going to show you guys.
Okay.
Which is really funny because this is an important trick when you're using it. And Brett borrowed some of this from me a little while ago, and I forgot to tell him the trick. And he had a really sad face experience with this as a result, because it will stick to things if you don't like pull it off in an aggressive yank. So what I do, you see I just clip 2 wires right there. Okay, you can clip them to whatever length you love, whatever length works for you. These are a little long, but it doesn't really matter. I usually stick a glob here. That's so that it stays up and doesn't fall over. Okay, and then I usually put a glob here and a glob on the other one, and that's it. And then kind of depending on what you're using it for, they're handy in different ways. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If we had like little bits, actually weirdly, oh yeah, we do kind of have something that'll work here. In a sec, I'll show you guys how I made my Eldar ruins. But these
so
guys,
what are these? These are just little like bits that are going to get put onto a base or something like that?
Yep, exactly. And if we wanted to airbrush them in this particular way, we could just put them on this, airbrush them, line them up. But you can imagine like anything, right? So like when I airbrush it, for example, my Eldar Guardians, I keep their guns separate from the rest of the body.
Right.
I just line up the arms and the guns, right?
Right.
They're not going anywhere. The other cool way you can use this, if you guys see this mess of what's in front of me right here.
You've got like a whole tray that you've made here.
Yeah, this is just a box of pink, just a slab of pink foam. And in this case, you don't put these on, right? And you just stick them in the pink foam, and I can access them and
nice.
interact with them this way as well. So the corks
cool.
the corks are super useful. I have a million of them. Yeah. So just want to show you guys that because it's a super useful tool.
I usually just get a bunch of paint on my hands.
Well, I also do that.
Yeah.
So I for whatever reason, they don't actually help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I typically found this technique has worked well for me before, what you're doing as well, but sometimes I'm just too lazy and I just end up spraying it on my hand and just having a bad paint day on my hand.
That's that. Okay, so I'm gonna, Brian, you can switch it down here for a little bit because I'm gonna show you guys how to make the little bits that I just showed you, which are these. Let me do a close up here. So here's the cooking show magic room we're gonna work on a little bit later, and here, base, excuse me, and here are the ruins. So to make these, I use the Green Stuff World rolling pin. So you might have seen this around, and lots of people have used these for bases. It's not a unique idea to me. This is what they're intended for. And pretty much I make a batch of these. I actually don't use green stuff for it though. I use what I've used before to make stuff on the stream and on the channel, which is I use Magic Sculpt.
You love Magic Sculpt.
I do love Magic Sculpt.
You've probably talked to me for several hours collectively in my life about Magic Sculpt.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's a great product. It's just so much easier to work with than green stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Green stuff is very particular, and you have to get it to just the right stage, before you can use it.
Yeah.
And sometimes with these molds, it's really hard to get it to release correctly, right?
This one, they can be a little tricky with this as well.
That's probably. Would you say that's the hardest part of working with these molds is making sure that you can get it to release and keep its detail?
Yeah.
Right. That's the part you have to master because I've heard a lot of people they've bought these things, and then they get stuck where they just find that they can't get it to work. I know Bridger was really excited. He bought a really cool roller like this to create some Custodes bases. And that was actually a big problem he had too, was getting it to kind of release. And that's the part that he had to go on and like do some more practice and stuff to get it to work.
Yeah, so two things I'm gonna do. First, I'm not gonna roll directly onto this paper right here.
Right.
Because if I do that, we'll never get it up later. And so I want to put it on, ideally, actually I didn't bring any, but ideally if you get like sent junk mail.
Okay.
And you get like a slightly glossy piece of like
a flyer,
like a
pizza, pizza flyer,
right? Like
you didn't know what pizza looked like,
right? Yeah, so you need that glossy thing,
right?
And there's like all of their pizza for like here's like this amount of pizza for $7.99.
That's right.
Here's this, right? Exactly.
You want that. That's the good stuff.
That's the good stuff.
I love that recycling you're doing, making use of that junk mail. All of a sudden, we can all take those junk mail flyers down from us that say no junk mail, and say just glossy junk mail.
Just glossy. Can you imagine requesting specific junk mail from your?
I feel like they wouldn't give it to you. Like they'd be insulted.
No, they definitely wouldn't give it to you. Okay, so I put this here, nice and simple, and I'm going to roll it out. And how thick should it be rolled out? Good question. I would say.
I'm so glad you asked it of yourself.
I would say do different amounts. It's sort of up to you. I'm actually they give you can buy a blank one, by the way, to like roll it out rather than go into the kitchen and use one you'll eventually use for food. But I just use the shaped one to roll it out. And anyway, I kind of like to see some of the different patterns or what's going on here.
I think that looks cool.
Yeah, we could be done. We could say that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
See you later, everybody.
We
did it.
We're done. see you guys Friday or next week.
Yeah.
So the point is, I kind of put a glob down like this. Literally, this is super easy to work with. And actually, you could see it wasn't having any problem releasing at all. All of these guys have, you cannot see this at all, no matter how
I'll try to zoom in for you.
No matter how much we zoom, it's clear.
You can see a bit.
They have different patterns on them. So, for example, on this guy, right here is like the Wraith symbol. This base is actually going to be used for something very wraithy in the near future that we actually will make on stream.
Ooh.
And so I will maybe try to include the Wraith symbol, like the Wraith, while investigating it, was like, ooh, here's where the Wraith temple used to be. This could have been me, you know? So here we go, and we just go straight, and that's it. This area doesn't have anything interesting going on, but I don't really care. I'm not going to use all of it.
Because you'll trim it afterward.
I'll trim it afterwards.
Right.
And in fact, let me actually grab a hobby knife behind me real quick. And then what I do is I cut before
Okay.
it dries.
Yeah.
Okay, so all I do then is kind of find some interesting shapes. And I'm just going to say I want to make some big. And you're thinking like, well, do I need ones for infantry? Do I need ones for larger models? I like to keep cool things intact. Like I said, I want to keep this Wraith thing intact. So I'm going to cut like that, cut like that. I don't really want the weird rounded edges, so I'm going to kind of cut those off. Although, I mean, you certainly could make those work. There's one, there's two, that's a big one. Here we'll do a little bit across there.
So you're doing like the broad strokes, and then you might work on the exact shape afterward.
Exactly. I'm going to use a Dremel when they dry.
Right. Kind of chip them out a little bit.
I'll show that.
Make them feel more stone.
Yep.
How long does this stuff take to dry?
I would give it a day.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. No need to rush something like this.
This pulls right up right now. And like you could give it an hour and then yank them up and then just let them dry further. That's actually what I do usually on the glossy paper. This seems to be working fine though.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that easy. So
that's pretty cool.
I don't know. I have used it with green stuff and I feel like Magic Sculpt works better.
Yeah, I think it does too. You could see with green stuff, we would have had to roll it out in advance, probably let it sit for, like 30 minutes or something?
Yep.
I don't know, maybe not quite that long, but long enough. Some people I've seen with green stuff, they start to put materials on the mold itself to try and have it release better. And it's like, you didn't have to go through any of that.
Nope.
So that's definitely a lot better.
This is it. I would just set this aside. Obviously, you're going to this is going to be like a Saturday morning before you get going on the rest of your hobbying. You sit down, you roll a bunch of this out.
Right.
You make 60 of these. You let them dry. You don't base your
And that's it. You do it as one process.
Just one process.
I agree. Bases for me are all about assembly line.
Yep.
And I will often, everyone knows, I've talked about this in the past, I love batch painting. Often when I'm painting an army, I will do like 2,000 at a time.
Yeah.
Because once I've got the color in the airbrush, for me, it's so much faster.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with bases. And one of the things I actually often do is when I first do the basing for an army, I often base almost 500 points or 700 points more than the models I have. And I even have extra bases just sitting around so that, there's a new unit that comes out. And, if it's Space Marines, I need more 32s or something like that.
Yep.
And then I can come back and I already have those bases. And I've already done all that batch process.
Yeah.
Because nothing's worse than a new 5-man squad comes out and I have to go through the whole process just for 5 models. That's actually not fun.
I would, never do it for 5 models. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to actually look. This is perfect. I gave myself a gift past Zach, and you probably can't see it, but here it is. This is the Wraith symbol again. So
this is a finished piece that you've already
primed. This is a finished
primed.
piece I did maybe in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just had a bunch made already, and this one's already been primed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice and easy. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you guys real quick. The only thing I just kind of want to show you guys here. You can see this one right here that I did has one leaning on top of the other.
Yeah, that's cool.
When you do that, it just makes it look like kind of a mess. If you ever want to do that, you're going to find with the Dremel, you want one of the angles to be more flat. So this one is going to sit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Dremel this down to a nice flat. This way we just have...
Are you really breathing in that Magic Sculpt dust?
I love Magic Sculpt so much that I just breathe in the... No, please actually don't do that. There we go. So it's just more flat now.
That looks great.
Yeah. Okay. So
you're going to start gluing that together?
I'm going to start gluing it together.
I'll show people what I'm up to over here. So what I'm going to be working on is these bases that you saw. Remember these snowy bases? And I'm using a product that we have here at Tabletop Titans and Hobby Titans started to love a lot, which is the AK series of terrain kind of products. It's a diorama series is what it's called. And you'll find a lot of your hobby stores. And they have many different kinds. We've tried a handful of them. And honestly, we've really fallen in love with them over the traditional Games Workshop hobby paints, which are good. Or terrain paints, I'm sorry trying to say. And also, the old school like sand method. I like this a lot better. So what you do is you take anything, like this little plastic knife, and you just kind of slop it on. This one that we're using here is called Rough Terrain. This is probably one of the more versatile types that you can use. And just kind of spread it out, being kind of liberal with it. I think that's generally the way to go. And this stuff is going to take a little while to dry. So it's not going to dry in a few minutes. You're going to want to leave it overnight, just like the Magisculpt. And I'm usually very careful that I don't let it go below the ridge because I love the clean ridge around the edge of the base. So if I get it there, I'll just kind of wipe it off like I did here. And one of the things you're trying to do here is you're trying to give yourself a material that's going to dry brush well. And so that's what you want to keep your mind on when you're putting it on, is that you're trying to create a shape or shapes that are going to dry brush well. And so I'm kind of chopping with the knife here, which creates little peaks. And those peaks are exactly what my dry brush is going to pick up. And that's all there is to it. So this base is basically done. Now, maybe you would have known that I rebased my orc army not that long ago. And orcs are crazy, right? You have hundreds of models. I had to rebase several hundred models, and I wanted to do it in 3 days. And this is what I used. I used AK Rough Terrain, and I did like 300-400 bases in just 3 days.
Yep.
And it was, not only did it look great, but it was really fast. And one thing I'll say, and this is the thing that you and I have both talked about, those were really old models, and a good base, unified base, can really take an older army or an army that isn't really up to snuff, and it can really make it look great. Because that army, I will say, it was kind of looking old, it wasn't looking amazing. And even here in the studio, we had never played it, because we were like, I don't know, we want to put it on stream, it doesn't look that great. And then all we did is I rebased it, and I kind of touched up the main highlight color, which was red on them, because they're Evil Sons.
Okay. But
just a little bit, right? And that's it, and all of a sudden, Adrian was like, is this the same army? Like, did you repaint this? And I was like, no, this is just basing, basically.
Yep.
And it made all the difference. So I really think that don't skimp on the base.
Don't skimp on basing.
The base, it matters a lot.
And I've rebased my T'au. I've repainted my T'au, but before I repainted them the last time, I rebased them.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I got an airbrush. I was like, all right, now I need to repaint. Because the basing, I almost felt like was beyond the level of...
Like the base was better than the model?
The base was better than the model, right? This is a few years back. And yeah, super big deal, basing. Okay, so
with this base that you just did, I noticed that you painted the layer before you put any sort of other material on top.
Yep.
Right? I've seen people make that mistake before, where they leave it black underneath, and then they start putting materials on top. Is there a reason why you did that first?
So the thing is that I'm going to, and I'll kind of show you guys what this looks like here. And by the way, I did see Bill made a great comment. I just dremeled, magic
without glasses.
Without glasses, yeah, and glasses are a great point.
Eye protection with a Dremel is highly advised.
Highly advised, yeah. So while I'm here showing you a horrible thing, yes, Bill is correct. Do that. So yeah, I have just painted the whole thing. The reason is because I want my rims. I like light colored rims. I don't like black rims on my bases, and so I want to have the rim painted. I like to not use brushwork when I can, not because I'm lazy about brushwork, but because airbrushing for me is faster and looks better. So I get a faster result, better.
Yeah.
That I can't do. I'm not that good with brush that I can make it look like it's airbrush.
That it's so smooth, yeah.
Maybe
that's that 2 or 3 thin coat thing.
Yeah.
That no one has patience for.
Right. I think I can do it, but I don't want to.
It's patience.
Right.
It's patience. It's not actually. I wouldn't say it's skill.
It's
patience.
Yeah. So I do that, the first coat. I also want these ruins to be the same color as the rim, kind of. So yeah, that's why. And then I'm not going to paint, for this Eldar bases, I'm not going to paint the texture paint.
Right.
I'm using one of the Citadel ones.
So you're gonna use it as is. I've actually had trouble.
I'm going to dry brush it.
You're going to dry brush it.
I'm going to dry brush it, but sorry, I'm not going to coat it.
You're not going to coat it. Yeah. I've used the GW texture paints as well, and I found that sometimes when I tried to dry brush them, that they kind of flaked off for me a bit. I was having trouble getting them as solid as I wanted them to.
Yeah, you have to. I'm going to use you got to be really careful. Yeah, you're right. Especially this one, actually, which I forget what it's called, but I'll get to it in a second. So, put my first layer down. Normally, I use this paint that Citadel makes. It's called XV88. We've chatted about it on the channel before.
Oh, I love XV88.
It's the least helpful indication of what the color actually is ever.
It used to be called T'au ochre.
Right, and they were like, that's...
And it was an ochre color.
Right, and they were like,
made sense.
Not good. They were like, let's just call it XV88.
Yeah, which XV88 is the number of a crisis suit.
A number of, yeah. So I make sure I get the rims here, and I'm not really that concerned with what's going on here in the ruins, because I am going to actually recess wash them a little bit. And then I could have already done that, as a matter of fact, and sometimes I do. I'm kind of half distracted because I'm going through my process, but I can just hit it real quick right now. And I hit it usually with Agrex Earthshade, or sometimes I use, today I'm going to use Reichland Flesh Shade.
Yeah, Flesh Shade's nice. It's a little warmer.
Yep. And so that's it. And then these are done. And then once this is done, I'll be using Agrelin Earth. Agrelin Earth.
Yeah.
Agrelin Earth. I'm going to use that, and then that's it.
And the Agrelin Earth is a Citadel texture paint.
Yep.
Basically, you paint it on, let it dry, and it creates these little cracks. Pretty distinctive look, actually, which is pretty cool. But there's actually a lot of nuance to it about how thick you put it on. The thicker you put it, the bigger the cracks, but also the easier it flakes.
Yes.
So it's a double-edged sword.
This is extremely true. I usually would just say like go hog wild, but Brian's right. Like they'll flake off. So after this first layer, and again, I could have done this in the second layer. I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to put some. It's still a little wet, but I don't really care. I'm just going to kind of touch some recesses with this. This is the Flesh Shade. Again, you could use whatever you want as a shade, and it's okay if it's a little messy because we're going to hit it again with some more terrain. Terrain, what am I talking about? Some more, another load of airbrush real quick. And then, then Brian, I can pass you the airbrush.
Yeah, I've got, my next step is an airbrush. Do you want me to just clean this out while you're
going?
No,
let me, because I'm going to hit it.
Because you're still going to do it one more time. Okay.
Okay, so there it is, looks good. And I don't want it to go into the recesses, so I'm going to do, you can see I'm doing it at a little bit of an angle. You can almost even kind of move the thing into into the stream. And there we go. And that's it. So let me clean this out for you, Brian.
Okay.
And then,
while you're doing that, I'm curious what chat's working on today. You're all hobbying at home.
Yeah.
You working on some bases? If you are working on, what are you working on some bases for? And if you've got a big project that you've just been having a hard time getting through, come join us on Friday. We're going to be getting through a whole project. Hopefully, we can help you get through a whole project. Some of you, I dare you, do the whole thing with start to finish your own project.
That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be pretty cool. And then you can post up in the Discord what it is you've finished, what you've got done. Maybe even actually partway through the day, we can take a look at the Discord and see what other people are working on, kind of post it up, right?
Yeah, we actually want to start, Brent and I want to start doing a little bit of a fan thing as well.
Yeah.
Maybe, I think where you said we're going to start that next week. So just going through the Discord and finding stuff that we think looks cool and just posting it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm going to do next is I've got to put the first layer of paint on this base. So what we've got here is one base that's kind of already had it's already been primed and it's already had the terrain dry. So you can see it's white. It kind of looks like a glue mixed with sand because it's like what it is.
That's pretty much what it is.
It's a glue mixed with sand. And then this one is already dried. It's hard to see, I know, but it's already dried, and we're gonna paint it here. And this first layer is just a base layer. So we're using Citadel Mechanica Standard Gray.
Yep.
Pretty, as the name says, standard.
Pretty standard.
It's a mid-tone gray, probably a little on the slightly darker side, and makes a great base coat for almost anything. So we don't need much of it. And what are you doing next? You're just going to build another base?
Yeah, so the next thing I'm going to do while Brian
You know, it would be great if this was in a dropper bottle.
I know, we've had this conversation a lot on stream.
I feel like it's never a bad time to remind GW that it should be in a dropper bottle.
Dropper bottles are hot takes around here.
Really?
I don't like them.
Oh.
For the simple reason I like to add paint back in.
Oh, I see.
My favorite.
You know what I'll do?
This is the best.
I'll just add the right amount of paint the first time. And no, I'm with you though. No, that's good. It's a bit of both, right?
This is the best, right? And this is Vallejo makes this primer in this, and this is how all Minotaur paints are as well.
Yep.
It's kind of like a mixed bag. The Citadel ones, actually, I've been telling people this, but not knowing the name of the product. At Game Castle the other day, I saw...
Game Castle is our local hobby store.
Yeah. They sold out, but I saw the thing there by the register, and it's almost like a weird, like, for feeding a baby, like the bottle, the nipple thing that you put on top of a bottle. Somebody made them for Citadel paints.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen those too.
I saw them. They were all sold out, of course they were, because everybody's been asking for this product for a million years.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brian,
that's it for me. I've put a gray layer on it. We're going to let it dry because we've got to put several washes. And the thing about bases, the thing that as we talk about production lining.
Yep.
There's several steps that take time. Putting this diorama, rough stuff on, that's a day. So what I would do is sit down for a day, every base. If you've got to do 50, 100 bases, you do all of them in one day, in one go. That's me at least.
Yeah.
And then I set them aside. You come back the next day and you do your base coat on all of them. But by the time you're done the base coat on the last base, the first one's ready for wash, typically.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you could do the wash, and then you walk away for, typically I would just walk away for another day, and then I come back, and then you could do the, dry brushing next steps. So we're gonna wait for this to dry, we're gonna then do the wash, and we're gonna hope that the wash dries fast enough for us to dry brush, because dry brushing with a wet wash, bad news. It's very, very bad news.
Yeah. Okay, while Brian's cleaning this airbrush, I'll show you guys for the T'au. Whenever you make a base, it's my opinion that there's kind of three components, four maybe we'll talk about. The components are you want to have your color picked out, and you want to be thinking about the natural nature aspect of where it is that you are depicting. The same view that I take on terrain. I say we're in a taiga, we're in a jungle, we're in a dry arid canyon. But what is the man-made or Xenos-made or demon-made or what is that component to the base? Or if failing that, what about the natural component is a little more spectacular than sand?
Yeah.
So for my Eldar, what I'm imagining is we've got kind of like an arid-looking area, but there are also green plants. So I'm sort of imagining what they kind of call like a Sahel, which is a mix of where you move from like a desert to a savanna, and maybe there's like a wet season. So these green plants are coming up, but there's also the ruins of the civilization, right? For my T'au, I wanted them to be, like I said, high jungle. So I'm thinking someplace near an equator, like if this was Earth, but high elevation. Mm-hmm. So I used rocks, and the rocks I use are rather large. I'll put one on the glam cam. I'll put the cooking show magic one here.
Okay.
And you can see the rock on this thing. Okay. So that rock is a big part of the base. And if that rock is not there, then there's really like no topography to this base. There's nothing kind of like interesting to draw your eyes in. It's just a gray blob. And the model's on it, of course. But regardless, I like to have some kind of something to provide like elevation and texture. So to make these rocks, because my T'au army is old and I've been working on it forever, they really predate the popularity of 3D printing.
Right.
So I made them the old-fashioned way.
Right. I love. You're also a pro at this. This is a thing that I'd never done until I saw you.
Yeah, I've retired largely from this because I hate it.
You used to hold parties at your house.
We did.
Where the actual goal of the party was just to manufacture as many of these kinds of things as we could.
Yeah. So this is made from basically resin. and it's molding. And this is a mold that I got from Woodland Scenics, which is also the company that I always plug when I'm talking about my pink foam wire cutter. And they make these rock molds, and I have 2 of them or 3 of them, and this is what I use for my T'au bases. So you go and you get this modeling resin, and it's not particularly inexpensive, I'll be honest, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to work with.
That's true.
What's really a pain in the butt to work with is to make your own molds with the silicone. That I've completely retired from.
You did used to do that.
I did used to do it. I hate it. It's a pain in the butt. And one thing I will say, if you're, I never, and I'm not doing any kind of morality thing here, but I never recasted anything like a complete model.
Like a Games Workshop model.
Yeah,
or something like that.
I never did that. But what we would do is we would recast some little bits, or we would recast like things that could be interesting for terrain. A lot of that stuff. And if you think you're going to save money doing silicone, making your own molds,
you're not really.
Yeah, one mess up and you're done, because the silicone molds, the silicone is so expensive.
That's true.
I can't even.
And that's even buying it at like industrial prices from an industrial place.
So expensive,
right? If you tried to buy it from some hobby store, it would be even more expensive.
Well, my favorite, Tap Plastics, sells it. And,
and that is like an industrial provider.
Yeah.
But if you tried to buy the boxes of resin that come from these hobby companies, the silicone, I'm sorry, from these hobby companies, it's even more.
It's a lot. The resin is a little more reasonably priced.
Right. Resin isn't too bad.
All I do anymore now is I just make the rocks, like I showed you guys with the mold.
Yeah.
So you can find the mold online. Nowadays, honestly, if I was to restart an army, which I do all the time, but I wanted large rocks that stuck up, I would probably check 3D printing.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't do this anymore.
This is good for large terrain projects. This is still the go-to if you're building like a diorama or a large terrain project.
Yeah.
I think that's still definitely the case.
That's probably true. I just hate it.
Yeah, I know.
It's a messy process.
It is.
When you go, you got to get the 2 parts. You mix them together. Once you mix them together, you've got like 3 minutes. To get in the mold. It
actually really does take a lot of practice. And you should expect to be bad at it for a while.
Which is
right. You got to be really committed.
Which is expensive. It's expensive to be bad at it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's
so
a shame.
it's not one of my favorites. I would always 3D print nowadays, but I'm kind of stuck into this tech because my army uses it.
Yeah, so, and you want to match it. You want it to look the same.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, good thing you have some made already.
I have a bunch.
You can't expand your army past a certain size because you'll run out and you'll have to start making more.
I mean, I still have the molds. I gave all of my resin stuff. I gave everything away.
Who's
Bill?
Oh, really?
Bill,
so he was still into it.
He was still into it. I gave everything to Bill right at the beginning of COVID. I had like 2 boxes. I was like, I hate all this stuff.
Yeah.
Someone come get it. And he was like blown away. He's like, why would you not want this? I was like, you'll see. Can I have the Mechanicus standard?
Sure.
Right. But yeah, not necessarily recommend it out there to you guys. But if you want to get into it, be careful, I would say.
Yeah, fair enough.
And here's the real thing. Order 1 million little plastic, like, I guess they almost look like beakers.
Yeah, that's right.
Order 1 million, like,
if you're going to get into
cups,
it, you need that.
You need that.
You need lots of little mixing cups.
And mixing cups and coffee stirs and everything. So, starting the T'au.
So what's next?
Oh, wait. I almost just put that on there without.
Because you got to base it first, right?
Prime it, yeah. So I glue the rock, and then I'm going to just hit it with a little bit of primer. Our spray primer here, and then I will apply the Mechanicus Standard Gray.
What do you use as your spray primer?
So Brett very recently hooked me on this surface primer, the Vallejo surface primer.
Yep.
There's a number of reasons that this transition was perfectly timed. One is we don't have the ability to like rattle can.
We're not going to rattle can.
We're not going to
here.
rattle can,
yeah.
Here, right?
Like we have a pretty strong ventilator that's pulling air here, and that's good enough for the little bit of airbrush we're doing. But it wouldn't be good enough for a rattle can. Like the fumes would be really intense.
And honestly, like it's not even that. Like I hobby a lot here in this space over the course of the week, and I don't want to like be out in the parking lot. We're like in an office park, right? I don't want to be like out in the office park and like people are coming and going, and I'm like this like almost 40-year-old man like on my knees, like primed. Like
somebody would call the police for sure.
Somebody would,
and it would be me.
So yeah, I use airbrush primer now. Also, it's just nicer. You can prime in a house
You can
or in an apartment.
I don't know how many of you have had this problem. It's like sometimes the weather. I used to live in San Francisco for a long time, and it's rarely the right humidity/temperature for rattle cans. Almost never in San Francisco.
Oh my God.
And if you try to rattle can when it's like super cold and foggy, it's not going to work. I guarantee it. And so I used to have to go like a week before I could paint this model that was just sitting here because I had no other way to do it. And I kept trying to like maybe today I can do it, and then I couldn't. And so having this so you can do it inside, it sounded like it was going to be like a rare problem for me, but it became like a pretty big issue.
Yeah.
And I was using the same thing.
The other thing that's kind of funny in the Bay Area, if anyone who's lived in the Bay Area, and I realize there's other parts of the world like this, but we have what I guess are called microclimates.
Yeah, sure, right.
And so, like Brian being in San Francisco and me being in San Jose, it could be 101 where I'm at and be like 68 where he's at.
San Jose is always the right climate for
rattle can.
For rattle can, there's no humidity, it's the perfect temperature. It's like what rattle cans were designed for.
Yep.
Whereas San Francisco, especially if you're on the west side of the city, is never rattle can temperature.
San Francisco even has microclimates
within
the city, and it's
sure
only like 9 square miles of a city.
No, totally. It's over it's like the halfway mark.
I have this, actually, you'll appreciate this. As you know, I had family out here for the past few weeks, and they were blown away by the microclimates. But one of the things we've had, it's been in the news, we've had extremely hot weather.
That's true. Not here, though.
Not so bad in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Although it was a little warmer. And my wife and I went up to San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I put my weather underground on San Francisco's temperature.
Yeah, right.
And then I forgot to switch it back. So we're planning all these events for my family to go out and do stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be 68 today, guys. Yeah. The low's going to be 62. The high's going to be 68.
So they're all putting on jackets?
Yeah, and we're out in San Jose. We're in Los Gatos. Yeah. We're in the Redwoods and stuff around here. And it's 89.
It was actually
89,
hot.
92. I'm like, God, every day this thing is wrong by so much, by 20 degrees, just over and over every day. And then I'm just laying in bed one day. I'm like, oh my God, Meg, I just realized I've had it set in San Francisco for 3 weeks.
Yeah, and even you can't. There's no such thing as a San Francisco temperature. So anyone who lives in San Francisco, they know that you have to tell it the nearest park or something that you want to be in, because and you have to Google it because San Francisco, an average temperature makes no sense. Okay, so I have this base. Let me just show you quickly what I'm going to do here. So I actually have 2 different washes we're going to do to get 2 different effects. One of them is actually an air paint, and it's called Death Shroud Clear. And what it is, it's a dark bluish black, but it's also a little glossy. And so we're going to use this to get more of an icy effect on this base. So we're going to do it in kind of low-lying areas where we think the melting snow is going to be pooling, kind of creating icy effect. And then we have good old trusty Nuln Oil, which we're just going to do in the other spots of the base. We're not going to mix the 2 together or anything. So I'm going to start with the low-lying areas, and I'm just going to try to put it in here. And it's a wash. We don't have to be too particular, but we also don't want to. We're not doing a full coat of this particular wash at this time.
But it is sort of about telling a story or saying giving an idea of what's going on in the climate. All of these, obviously we're going to be putting snow on it, and all of these ogre folk and giant folk in Age of Sigmar live in when areas.
Yep, they absolutely do sometimes. Yeah.
So yeah, we wanted a little bit of ice. Originally, I actually only used Death Shroud Clear when I was
for the whole base.
For the whole base, and it was not a good look. So I went back and added Nuln Oil over top of it, which, by the way, pro tip, you can do. You can actually remove the gloss from a glossy.
Oh, of course you can.
Shape by just putting the non-glossy.
Well, and yeah, this is a challenge, because normally I would matte finish an entire model, right?
Right.
And so you if you wanted to preserve that gloss, you'd have to think about that. Either you'd have to go back, you'd have to not do the matte over top of this base,
right,
or you'd have to go and add the gloss back with an actual gloss coat.
While Brian is doing that, and I'm letting my T'au base dry a little bit here, because I did make a little bit of a mess of it by, it's going to be fine, but I hobby on weird ways in the hobby stream, and the big way that comes out is I don't let things dry properly.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're on a clock here.
We're on a clock. So I put my Mechanicus standard gray while the primer was still a little wet, and
That won't work.
we're gonna see. We're gonna see what happens.
That's a new technique right there.
It's a new technique. So while he's doing that, I'm gonna go back to the Eldar base, going back and forth between two bases here, and I'm gonna use the Gallon Earth. As Brian was saying earlier, it is very true that the kind of thicker you put this stuff on, the more intense of an effect you get. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Because,
yeah, you have to know how to use it.
Yeah.
This is a paint that I would say you test with. You don't do all your bases in just like one go. You definitely want to do a couple tests.
Exactly. Now, if you don't put it on thick enough in an area, which I like to do in some areas, like right here near the edges, I'll frequently do. I left a super little tiny sliver here, which I actually normally try not to do. But if you don't put it on thick enough, it just won't do anything, and you'll be like, "Why did I buy this?"
Yes, it won't. It'll just be like a paint.
It'll be like a really gross, craft paint.
The first time I did it, I put it on way too thin, and I was like, "Oh, this stuff doesn't actually work." Like I thought I had been scammed, and I was like, "Oh, this stuff doesn't work at all." And then I went back to watch like a clip. And I found out, I was just putting it on too thin.
Duncan is just like slathering it on.
Yeah, they were putting it on way thicker. And then I went the other way and I put it on so thick in some areas that it just started ripping off. And then I found that I had to put like a pretty hard coat over top of it of sealant and just still be careful with it.
So here's the look you want to go for. Ready? It's kind of like you asked for just slightly extra mayo. That's the look.
That's a bit too much mayo for me, but I'm with you.
But it is extra mayo.
It is. You know what? It is extra mayo.
It's slightly extra mayo. Like you and I are from East Coast, right? You're.
Can you call me East Coast?
You're from like East Coast Canada.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Do you have? Let me ask you this. Do you have like Italian delis in Toronto?
For sure. Toronto is actually very multicultural, so you'll get a ton of really cool foods from around the world.
Like a place where you go in and they'll make you the sandwich right then and there.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That's actually a really big thing there.
Right. That's a big thing. That's like bigger on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have it on the West Coast, but anyway, and you say to the guy like, hey, I want like the amount of mayo you're going to put on. I want you to put like just a little bit more than that. That's kind of the way
I want you to be a little bit uncomfortable with the amount of mayo. Just a little bit.
Which is, I'll be honest with you, how much mayo I usually put on a sandwich.
All right.
Myself.
Fair enough. It depends on the sandwich. If it's dry, needs a little more help, you know?
So cooking show magic, that's now you're in dry time.
Yeah, and how this is you leave this stuff to dry a long time.
I honestly leave it. Well, okay, so I came in today and did this, but I got in here at about 11, and I did this at like 11:30 or so.
Yeah, but what we're talking about is definitely hours.
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 I usually
for sure.
I usually just do overnight. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Same with me. I've always done it overnight. If you've ever seen my Iron Hands be played on the channel, my Iron Hands are Agrellian Earth, the entire army.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's our cooking show magic of the end result. You can see I've scuffed up the base quite a bit on this, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of brushwork, which is fine. I'll show you how to handle that kind of easily. The next step for this guy is sort of unique, actually, and I'll show it to you guys. I'm gonna kind of have to work around it a little bit. Because I use a special type of plant on these, and I use actually these paper plants. So let me show this to you guys, because these are a little weird, and I know whenever I read about them or hear anyone talk about them, there's a lot of skepticalness about them.
You know what I love about this? It's like they cut down plants to make paper, and then they turn the paper into plants.
Yeah, it's a little messed up when you think about it.
I'm into it.
So let me show you a couple different ones I use here, and I'll be honest with you. I'll give you some recommendations on which ones are good and which ones are not so good.
Okay.
Anything that's like a very broad leaf, like this one right here. Hold it down here. This one is the banana palm, I think it's called, or I don't know, some kind of large. This one, no,
Yeah,
I should.
It's
actually,
a pretty big leaf.
I should tell you exactly what it is. Oh, it's not on here. That's weird. This one, these work great. This guy works great too. This one is also kind of like a basic broadleaf plant.
That one's called the Moosa Palm.
Moosa Palm, right? Okay. This one is pretty good. I'm very happy with these two, and I'm very happy with like this basic, very traditional palm as well. I'll just show you the one that I don't think, like, it's not quite there yet, in my opinion, and I probably wouldn't get it again, although I probably will use it sparingly, is the Fern. What I have found is that the Fern does not hold up well. Like, my Ferns are all very...
Like they get damaged.
They get damaged.
It's too fine.
It's too fine going in and out.
It's the one they use in the picture because it looks great.
It looks great.
Just don't ever touch it or move it.
I actually bought... It's the only one I bought 2 of.
Because it does
because
look
I
great.
was so excited about the Ferns.
Yeah, it does really look good in the picture, but you know, you're playing with these toys. This isn't a diorama.
It's not, exactly.
Right.
And you know, I always cite Seth from Game Castle, and he's the guy that kind of talked me into these. And Seth is an amazing diorama painter, right?
Yeah, that's his specialty, is making great dioramas.
Going in and out of a case.
Not so much.
So far, these have mostly been okay, but the Ferns are the ones that have...
But you've been careful to keep them kind of close to the model, not like dripping over the edge sort of thing.
So I'll show you guys how I first of all, we like to show, not tell here. Well, actually, we do both, but I got to do only a little bit of telling here, and I'll just tell you what I've done to these so far. Again, it's kind of like Brian's been talking about, the batch painting concept. We batch painted these. I batch painted these. And what that means is I left them on the paper. I picked one color. You can see I wrote the color on it. Moot green, phalanx yellow. And so what I did is I took moot green and I hit some parts of these. You can see the color differences.
Man, everyone loves moot green. What a great color.
Moot green's amazing.
What
I actually
an amazing
forgot
color.
my moot green today.
Everyone should have, if you don't have a moot green, add that to your collection right now.
You know what's funny is I
green.
needed moot green for something else and I forgot it, but we have all these Reaper paints here. I'm like, well, there'll be something similar. There is not.
There's not. Moot green is actually a great, genuinely unique color.
So moot green, and then just a dab of phalanx yellow on this. On the Moosa Palm, I think I used Minotaur dark green. Wherever that went.
No, it's gone forever.
You had it.
I just had the box. I didn't. Did I have the actual?
No, the box is where I write the. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Minotaur dark green on the Moosa Palm, and I wrote it on there. I always write all my stuff down, guys. I'd recommend it too. I
do that too. I have like these Google Docs with the paint scheme for every army.
Got to.
And I sometimes, even if it's complicated enough, I'll have like in progress snapshots.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I'll show, this is actually where I was doing the highlights, things like that.
That's a good idea.
Because it's not always apparent if it's got multiple layers of airbrush and then a wash.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, was that highlight there? Or, it's so, yeah, I do that sometimes.
Okay, with the paper plants, they're fairly easy to take off. Like you're thinking as well, they show you using, they recommend using a hobby knife. Haven't really had to do that. I can usually just kind of carefully get it to pop off using my fingers. So I pull one out. This guy is interesting. It is, you can I like to do a little asymmetry with it. Okay, and I like to leave them intact like this. And what I have been doing with them, with this one in particular, ooh, let me fold the other way. There is texture, by the way, you guys can see there's texture like on one side and not on the other. I don't love that. I wish the texture was on both.
Yeah. But they intend you to kind of fold it down a little bit. They don't want them standing up too much. Like in their diagrams,
right?
They have it folding down.
I kind of preemptively bend the leaves to look a little natural. If you are, here's how I do it. I'll show you guys how I do it and what I would recommend. What I now do, this guy's finished. What I now do is I'm gonna, first, I'll be honest, I always, and this is an exception to the rule, this is a big part of how this looks. So I always have the model finished.
Of course.
And here.
Because it's got to play well. You don't want it like covering his face.
Exactly. And there are a lot of really cool things you can do with it, and we'll talk about that in a second. I have a video showing you some of the ways I've done that. First, what I then do is I usually glue this like this, and I only usually have used one type of plant per base.
Yeah.
I've tried doing a couple of different types, and it looks a little bit like a mess.
Yeah. It can get a little busy, and it can really take the magic away because it can start to highlight that they are just paper in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. So here's where because I don't have the model that I want to go right here, I'm just going to put this right up against the base, which is a good spot for it anyway.
Yeah, it's always nice to find ways to hide where it meets the ground, because that's one of its weak points a little bit too.
That's right. And that's actually what I'm going to show you guys, and that the process I'll have to work around a little bit. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold it here at its bending point. I'm going to let it dry. And then what I'll actually do is once this glue dries, I'm going to put more agrellan earth over
around it.
yeah.
You can kind of build up around it a little bit.
Very little bit, but That's the idea.
Yeah.
So that literally looks like it's coming.
It's not just paper glued to
Exactly.
the base.
So I'm just going to stick with that for now. Maybe on a model this size.
You can see here, I want to call out from maybe you can't see it quite as well on the stream, but if these were not airbrushed, they would not be half as nice.
Yeah, and
don't skip that step.
Don't skip that step. I actually didn't airbrush the Fern, which...
but the Fern naturally has more detail.
It has a little more detail, and you don't ever see shouldn't really be seeing the non-detailed side of the Fern. But I think I probably should have detailed the Fern. So this is it. So after this, I would add more Grelin. I would let that dry again, and I actually am going to do that. But my next step is I'm gonna dry brush this thing, and I could have done that step first, but I didn't. And
it's fine.
Yeah, to dry brush this, I'm not. You know, I see a lot of times like they go through these processes where they're introducing a new color all the time. I don't think that's necessary here. I'm literally going to dry brush this with Typhon Ash, which was the same color. Which is the same color.
But it's been washed since then.
Right, exactly.
So there is still quite a bit of contrast, right?
Right. And to your point earlier about the chipping, you just got to be really gentle. And even then, we might get some chips. We'll see.
Yeah, that is a risk with these GW texture paints. So just be aware. But if you have the right color, one of the things, big mistake, I made this mistake, and we talked about this earlier, never, ever, ever paint this stuff over top of black. Don't ever put the Grelin Earth over top of black, because it cracks, and then there's black in the cracks, and that does not make any sense. But also, you do want it a teeny bit darker underneath, in my opinion, than the stuff you're putting on top, because then you'll get a natural shadow in the cracks. And so, yeah, be thoughtful about that. And then if it does crack, it's not the end of the world, because you've got the right color underneath, and it can sometimes still work. It's not as big of a problem.
This base is going to be used for a Wraith Lord.
Ooh, nice.
Adding a little Wraith component to my Asuryani, my Simhan. A cool model. I love the Wraith stuff. Brett and I have...
I love the Wraith Lord, too.
I love the Wraith Lord. Actually, I have a Wraith Seer as well, which I'm really excited about. And we're going to actually do that on the stream pretty soon, the Wraith Lord. We did my Simhan Hornet about a month ago, so we'll do another... We haven't done a model in a little while.
I'm really excited to have the Mega Gargants on Friday, because they are some of the most epic models that any model company has made, but certainly Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And it's the first time Age of Sigmar on the hobby stream. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
What I was fumbling for segue into is Brett and I, in a few back when we did the Hornet, did our favorite models, and so because Brian's on the stream, I asked him to also submit his 5 favorite Games Workshop and Forge World models.
That's true.
Let's look at it.
Let's take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they asked me this, and when I think of my favorite models, I think of models that encouraged me to start a new army. Not necessarily, these aren't necessarily the models that I think are technically the most perfect, or that, you know, maybe the model itself is the best model. It's a model that made me want to start collecting a particular faction or an army. And I love centerpieces. I actually always start with centerpieces, because that's kind of what gets me excited. In fact, it's one of the reasons I love Age of Sigmar, because the game's all about centerpieces. And so I've got a bunch of centerpieces here. That's kind of what I've went with to some extent.
Yeah, I was noticing this.
And so the Silent King, actually, if you saw on Tabletop Titans, we played that yesterday. He's always great. He's one of the most epic characters they've ever made. In my opinion, he's kind of even more epic than some of the big Primarchs. So really love him. The Sakarin, I love it because it's like a centerpiece model that you can actually have like 3 of. It's like a centerpiece grade model. It's so beautiful. I think it looks great. It's a way to take a Space Marine army that has, you know, like, let's be real, like a Rhino, it's super bland, right? Like a Rhino Predator.
Super bland, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have the Sakarin, which is actually super cool. And so for me, it was a way to take this bland army of like Space Marine vehicles and really spice them up and have something special. And I always like to show up at our like hobby, or at our game days, with an army that had something different that people hadn't seen.
Yes.
And this Karn was like a way to put Space Marines on the table, which are vanilla, but make it so it's like, ooh, what are those, you know?
I like that too.
And so I love that. The Legion Fellblade, which I love. I was going to put in here the Baneblade. I love the Baneblade so much, but I actually like the Fellblade even more. I find that it's even more cartoony proportions in a way. Is like it's just like put the biggest gun you can in this game, and to me that's 40K. 40K is all about, you know, a universe of increasingly absurd guns.
Right.
Right? And the
Yes.
scale just gets increasingly absurd, and I love to represent that on the tabletop. And the Fellblade is like an incarnation of that, which I think
Yes.
is so cool. The new Tiger Shark model, I've always loved Tiger Sharks.
Yeah.
The old Tiger Shark model was a mess of a kit, but a lot of us powered through it. You have one? Do you have
I
one?
do not.
Oh, I have one, and I
think
you know,
Brett-
we have
Brett-
friends who have
yeah.
them. But the new Tiger Shark model, they did really good work on that, and it's a beautiful kit, and it's a grand model that you can actually play in everyday games of 40K because it's actually reasonably pointed, reasonably powered, and so I think that that's what I love about it. It's like probably the biggest model that you can play in everyday Warhammer, and I obviously like big models. And then I love the entire line of Forge World Contemptors that are Legion specific.
Okay, I was kind of wondering why specifically you had.
It's not the Ultramarines Contemptor, although I think it is beautiful and it's very Ultramarines. You know, there's like, for instance, I don't actually love the White Scars Contemptors. I love that they're special, but I don't love them. And for instance, I don't really love the Death Guard, you know, things like that. But so there are a few that I really, really do like. Ultramarines is one of the ones I like. I have several Salamanders Contemptors. I like them as well. I think they're cool. And I think they're all really great additions. Unfortunately, in modern 40K, you pay a command point to use them. So what you could do is magnetize them and use them as normal Contemptors and just make sure they have the normal Contemptor loadout, and which you should be doing with your Dreadnoughts anyway. So these were me. Centerpieces, things that launched new armies for me.
Yeah, Silent King is amazing. I love that model. I think it's like
It's pretty fantastic.
it's crazy. Yeah, definitely. Necrons had a huge release in about 2011. Then they went from being this very, lots of people are annoyed, but they
Right.
went from being like a very, almost intentionally no personality.
Yeah, super bland.
And they upped it a lot in 2011. And then I was really surprised to see like how big of a release they got again recently.
Yeah, it's an amazing faction now. So much personality.
It's a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about where we're at here.
Show me what you got.
So I am, this guy, the top is pretty much done. I'm going to add a little bit more grass, and I'll show you the type I like to use for that. I'm cleaning up the rim, and I don't, you know, I had some mess ups, so I'm going to be doing lots of little thin coats to get an airbrush look that is not done with an airbrush, so it's going to take a while. So I'll just let this dry, and then I'll go, and then probably is only going to take like 2.
Talk to me about your philosophy on like black rim versus colored rim.
Well,
How do you approach that?
I don't like black rim bases.
You don't like black rim for any army.
No.
Tell me why. What's up? This is a hot take. I think most of us out here we got the black rims.
Black rims
So
are
tell us
pretty
why not.
common.
Sell us on the not black rim.
I guess one, I would say it's really common, and it's
Sure.
I mean, like I've rarely had somebody look at my bases and go, there's something off those bases, or I don't like those bases.
Right. Like it doesn't look weird when it's not black.
Yeah.
But it looks a little predictable when it is black.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you lose anything by doing it a color. The color is part of my army. It's part of my army color,
right.
right? Like my T'au are mostly green and purple, but they're also gray. Like gray is part of that process, right? So I there's Adrian black rims. I like color rims. Adrian and I are supposed to base an army together too.
I actually I've done a bit of both. I certainly remember. I've been around since the days of Goblin Green rims.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of Goblin Green rims. That was certainly me for a long time. And most of my armies, I own maybe 40-ish armies, and I would say all but 3 are black. Almost all of them are black rims.
Okay.
So only 3 of them are not black rims. So
And what are those 3? Goblin green?
they're not Goblin Green anymore, unfortunately. I don't have almost any Goblin Green. I have only 1 or 2 models that I've done, like ironically,
that are
with the Goblin Green. But yeah, most of mine are black rims, so that's what I've gone with. And I don't, I have an affinity for it. It looks kind of like makes every model almost look like a showpiece. Mm-hmm. But you're almost right in a way where it's like if you're creating a whole army, the black can kind of distract from that a little bit. So there's definitely I think there's a good reason not to do black rim as well.
I'm not like I never see black rims and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
black rims. Like
Let us know in chat. Is it black rim? We should. Bridget told us there's a poll feature. I don't know how to do it, but we should find. Is it black rim or is it colored rim? What do you think? I think
black rims are going to win
because it's what more people are used to.
More people are used to. I don't know. I whenever I do something, I like to like any kind of creative endeavor. I like to do something that's maybe like weird.
Yep.
Whether it's cooking or whatever. So I don't know. It's just kind of a style thing.
I think both of them work well, but I think what Zach's trying to tell you is next time you do your bases, maybe think about not black rim. Think about maybe you could try something else. You might be surprised you like it more.
I've done light gray, my tower light gray, my Asuryani are this Typhon ash color.
Yeah.
I've done red, like the Martian red. I did a Space Ultramarines kill team.
Nice.
I've done blue for a Necron kill team.
Kill teams are great models to experiment with basing too.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Let me show them some progress here. So, or maybe, can I get even more zoomed on me or no? I can only get more zoomed on you.
Yeah, but we can put it here.
So I'm going to put it over here. So you can see this base here. It looks wet in places. That's not wetness, that is glossiness. And so in those kind of low-lying parts, we're getting a bit more of that melted snow and ice. And then in the higher parts, we're getting not so much of that. And so I'm going to see if it's still wet, or if I can dry brush it. Normally, I would let this sit overnight.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm picking up too much. I'm picking up a bit, but not too much. Because you got to, there's a thick part right there. I'm going to have to maybe give it a teeny bit more.
Yeah. So
if we had a hairdryer, I could blow dry it a little more. You can also just sometimes use the air from your airbrush.
Yep, go for it. So what I'll do while Brian's working on that, the T'au base is drying still because I spray painted one layer of paint on top of primer. That's kind of what happens when you do that. I do have a Cooking Show Magic T'au base, so let me show you what would happen next, but I'll jump ahead. But I'm only jumping ahead 2 steps. First, I would then spray this down with Mechanicus Standard Gray, or actually what I also really use is this, which is Minotaur, which is Badger Fur, but they're like exactly the same 2 colors. So you could use Badger Fur, or you could use Mechanicus Standard Gray, either one. What I use. And when I do that, I'm really focusing on the rim, but if some of it gets on the rocks, it's okay. It's not a big deal. Then once that's finished, I put on my T'au, I do use Citadel, and I use the Astrogranite and the Astrogranite Debris. Okay, so
I haven't used these paints.
Yeah.
These are, one of these is a contrast or?
No, these are technicals.
Oh, technicals, okay.
And I'll show you.
Super cool.
I'll show you the Astrogranite. It's just really gritty stuff. It's just like super sandy gritty. And the like you were kind of saying about the rough terrain, you were telling me earlier that there's like 2 versions of it. Citadel is the same thing. And so Astrogranite is kind of like your initial layer.
Okay.
And then Debris just puts some areas down that are going to be like a little more, detailed, really, for lack of a better word.
Neat.
Right, so just kind of put that on there. And then this would, normally, then we would let this dry. And so I did first the Astrogranite, and then that gives it a bit of a gritty texture, but not too much.
It's subtle. I like it, though.
And then you go back and you do a little bit more of the Astrogranite Debris. And that's the look. I'm not going to worry too much about the Astrogranite Debris today. Although
because we can't wait.
We just can't wait. However,
it
actually does dry really fast, so might actually be able to make it work. We'll see here. Once that's finished, the T'au base actually do a number of things on it that I'll kind of go through here with you guys in a second. What I want to also show you guys real quick, I shot another video here today from my Asuryani. Brian, yeah, it's vid 2. And what I want to kind of talk about a little bit while we wait for some stuff to dry is another sort of approach when you're basing that I did with my Asuryani. So these are Dire Avengers, right? These are kind of like basic troops. And when I based them, I sort of just took a very, basic approach. Like I said, what's happening? They're investigating ruins. So you've got some ruins, you've got some plants. There's like the one palm leaf on that guy right there. You can see, oh, there's the fern, by the way. But for other models, other units, I just played with the same components at different mixtures. So my Dark Reapers, I want them to kind of have the look of like they were stuck in ruins and woods somewhere where they just sit and just launch missiles like all battle long, right? They're not like they've got.
You know what? You should have based them as the interior of a Wape Servant because that's where they fire and fade back into.
And then finally, by contrast, my Rangers I just went all out on, right? Like this guy here in the middle is like in a canopy of Moosa Palms, and then this guy's like totally hiding. So they're very like hidden.
These are all like Boy Scouts at this point. They're really just making little forts. They're not even at war.
Yep, exactly. So that's kind of the when you do that. Like I didn't do that with my T'au.
Yeah.
But with my Eldar, I was like, well, like where would they be? Where would the different units be?
Yeah.
Like what makes them? You know,
it's really fun to play with this idea of the bases. You know. Being such a big part, you know, sometimes you do an army where you deliberately keep the base as like a second piece, you know, it's like a background.
Yep.
But in this case, you've chosen to make it a part of the model, part of the story.
Yeah.
And you'll even see a lot of the new Games Workshop models, they're incorporating the base into the model in a really strong, opinionated way, right?
Yes.
You've
yes.
certainly been seeing that with more and more of their characters, right? Something that comes to mind is Shrike from the Raven Guard. He's on this huge piece, or I think the most absurd version is the new Vindicare Sniper.
Oh yeah,
he comes with a part of the battlefield. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you're starting to see them start to explore this idea of making the base a part of the model. And you can do that at home, right?
Yep.
You can, with the techniques we're showing, building these rocks, molding these pieces, you can create that look, and it can go a long way towards making someone small, especially some of these old models that are just teeny. Like you've got like a Phoenix Lord. Phoenix Lord, derpy little, but it's supposed to be like a superhuman god.
Yeah. Stack them up on
a base is a way to really level it up, right?
Yeah, and actually, while we're talking about basing, you guys may have noticed, or may not have noticed, but you can rewatch all of those things I just showed you. All three of those units, I actually put on the new 28.5 base, not the 20.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, and there's I kept my Guardians on 25.
Okay.
But I put the Dire Avengers and the Dark Reapers and the Rangers on 28.5.
Yeah.
I'm taking some guesses here, you know.
Because what you're trying to predict is maybe Games Workshop will change the base size in the future.
Which is not something I can probably ever truly get right.
Yeah.
But I do think like we know that the new Banshees are on 28.5s, right? But honestly, I just found them to look better. I like
bigger bases almost always looks better. I think that's genuinely true. Like I was talking about redoing my Orc Boys, and I was taking them from small bases to larger bases. Now it's not as strong in the game, but it certainly makes the Orc Boy feel imposing, feel bigger and stronger.
They are officially now on 30s, though, right?
They're on big. They're on Space Marine size bases.
Space Marine, which is 32.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I think.
But it's definitely bigger.
It's 30 to 32, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 28.5 is great, and I'm actually glad the 28.5 came out because I don't want to see like a Fire Warrior on the same as a Space Marine.
Agreed.
I think a Fire Warrior probably should stay on 25, but I don't know. Kroot like are kind of in the middle.
I agree. It's too small.
And actually, if you look in the new 9th Ed core rulebook, the big book, you know they've got all these beautiful. There is like one of the guys who works there, like his T'au army, and he has Kroot, and they are clearly on 30s or 28.5s. They're not, and there's like Pathfinders right by them, and they're not on the same. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Kind of interesting.
So what are you up to next?
Okay, so still working on the T'au base. As a recap, the Asuryani one is virtually finished. All I have left to do on this guy is put down some static like grass, but I don't really use. I use kind of the pre-made tufts. I'll show you guys that real quick here. So, and then we can be done with the Asuryani one. So I have two different types. I have kind of this insane fuzzy dark green one, which I love, and I have this more traditional lighter green one. The lighter green one has like a little bit more of a shape to it, These have pre-stickiness on them, but
Yeah, it never works.
It doesn't work that well.
Not long term. Just put a little bit of super glue, right?
Yeah, that's what I recommend. So I usually do a little bit.
I love tufts. I used to, back in the day, I used to use a lot of static grass because that was like a thing.
Yeah.
And ever since I discovered tufts, every army has a tuft somewhere in it because they're kind of such a great hack, right?
Super.
They look really beautiful, and especially if you're really cautious with the right size and colors,
Yep.
they can go so far. And mixing the colors, some that are a little drier, some that are a little more alive. They can be really great.
Yeah, so I use, like I said, I use like a little light green one. The brand is Green Stuff World. I think I ordered a bunch of this together from my basing from them.
That's what these tufts are from?
Yeah, Green Stuff World. And the cool thing about the Green Stuff World ones is that they have like these like L shapes and these different shapes.
Yeah, right.
So they work perfectly like with my the ruins that I've cut out.
That's kind of cool, actually. I've not because I've tried them all and found the best, but I've found myself using a lot of the Army Painter tufts, and maybe that's just because they were the things that came up first on Amazon, and that's why I got them. But I was always happy with them.
Yeah, I think for the ones if you can see the ones we're about to use for the beast for the Maul tribe are Scenescapes 6mm tufts. You can see there from the Train Shop. Which is that you've been there, right? That model train store in Santa Clara, like in town here. And I saw them and I was like, oh, this is a pretty good deal. So I'm just gonna get these.
I'm into it. Yeah, they shouldn't be expensive. Don't be buying expensive tufts because they're actually a fairly affordable thing.
I'll put this on Glam Cam. This guy's pretty much done. What I would probably do is I would probably put the Wraith Lord on there and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I might then do like some more tufts. It's possible I might add the Moosa Palms because the Moosa Palms are tall and I like the way they like reach up and lay on things like War Walkers. So either option's possible, but I would stop here. If you don't have the model, if you're completing bases without knowing the model it's going to go
where its foot goes,
I would like leave a few things to be able to make last minute adjustments.
I agree.
Right?
I think that absolutely makes sense. We've seen a comment that the number of different products we're using here, it could seem a little daunting, right? There's many different products, but one of the things I will say is I find myself, I have a collection of terrain stuff, just the same way I have a collection of different paints.
Yeah.
And the same kind of basic components can make very, very, very different bases for different armies. So I've made many different armies using these same components and had very different results. So it might seem like we're using 5 or 6 different products, but keeping them kind of around, and for what it's worth, in my opinion, all of these products are really inexpensive that we've used so far.
Yeah.
And so none of them are really pricey things.
Citadel paint is the most
expensive thing, But so just have a collection, have a few of these AK terrain pieces, have a few of these cool little rollers for an army you're doing. Some of this Magisculpt is nothing, and you can use it for so much other great stuff. The tufts, I always have a collection of tufts of different colors. I always just have. And, these paper ferns you're using, those are very particular. I don't think I would just use those in any old army. You'd have to make a choice.
Yeah, you got to make a choice.
You do have kind of off camera here these Games Workshop ferns.
Yes, we're going to get to those.
Okay, yeah, and so this is a product I always had a few laying around of, and I've made use of these. These are very particular too. I find these hard to mix and match with.
Yep.
You can't just you can't just add these to any old base and it works. I did this on my Lizardmen or Seraphon army.
Yeah, the Bard Dragon.
And it was cool. So, but yeah, I would hope that you kind of just have these general pieces laying around. Now, if you only have one army, you're only doing your one army, then yeah, just buy exactly what you need. But if you're a general hobbyist who's working on several different projects, this is the kind of stuff I would stock for your terrain. Not just terrain, terrain and basing.
The other thing, other things, guys, to that point. One, keep in mind, we are making bases for 3 different armies. So we have products.
We brought a lot of stuff.
Right, we've accumulated products that we are using for 3 totally different armies.
That's true.
And then the other thing I'll say is, I will actually go through, I should add a link. I'll go through and do a paste bin on what we've used here today for everything. But But yeah, very fair point. Lots of this stuff is specific, but other things are like Magic Sculpt, especially if you're making terrain, right? I make a lot of terrain, so a lot of this stuff is just
Absolutely.
around.
Okay, so I think my base might be ready. What I did is actually a bit of a cheat. I put it on our air dryer type thing, our air cleaner, purifier. And let me pull it off of there. That should have hopefully dried it a little bit. Enough to attempt to dry brush.
And while Brian's doing that, I'll kind of just show what I'm doing here, which is that I'm just finishing up the T'au base. And what I'm doing right now is dry brushing. So first I'm dry brushing Administratum Gray, which is actually also what Brian is going to need. So I'm going to pass that to him now that I'm done. And then my formula, whenever I do Administratum Gray, I usually am ending up doing white over top of that. But you got to be super careful when you dry brush white because it can be like insanely extreme.
It could ruin everything, and there's kind of no coming back from it.
Yep. So I super make sure we're really dry here. And then I start on the rock because it's going to look the best on the rock anyway. So like if you have something that's really craggy and picks up dry brushing well, start there. Then I'm going to move to this area, the flatter areas, and you can see, there we go, it's going in pretty good. I actually do a lot of I do a lot of steps of dry brushing steps on the T'au base. You can see my Astro Granite's still a little wet. Not normally how you should do it, by the way. Normally you'd want to wait for that to dry. So after this, what I then do for my T'au is I use this. It's called Strachan Green, and this is really similar to like processes when we do trees. We're like starting to put like some life into the environment. And like I said, high jungle here. So I want a little bit of green, and I'm especially going to get the green on the rock. Okay, and I don't need to get it everywhere. I could just get it some unique spots, just a few little spots. I can put green also on the flat. So I put this green on, and you can see it's turning a little bit green there. And then what I'm going to do next is, if I had it, I don't have it, but I'll use a substitute. Like I said, Moot Green. Normally Moot Green is the last one, and I do such a tiny amount. I'm going to use this Moot Green closest thing, I think.
It's Moot Green supplement?
Yeah, Reaper has, which is called Moth Green. It's only like one letter different. So maybe that's what they were going.
That is the metric for figuring out how similar.
It kind of sometimes is.
It's sometimes, yeah.
It sometimes actually is.
There's like a couple cool apps that you can get for mobile phones that will show you substitute paints. I was shown it once where it's like you put in any paint name and it'll show you from every other company the closest paints.
That's interesting.
And I've had to use it because our local hobby store is always sold out of the color I'm looking for, the time I'm looking for it. So I've had to use that app. I don't know what the name of the app is, so you'll have to go check it out, but it exists and it's pretty handy.
So last kind of painting step on this thing is the Moot Green. And I'm very careful with that. I almost always only put the Moot Green on the rocks. I don't put too much on like the flat surface area. Although I did a little bit here, but for the most part, just focusing on the rock. And like, what is it, right? It's like algae. It's just like plant life. It's lichen. It's probably moss because we're in a jungle climate. And that's it. So what then is left to do on this guy is, well, one, I would need to touch up the rim, because I scuffed the rim up a little bit.
Yeah, get that black rim.
No, just like I'm cleaning up the rim on the Aeldari one here. I need to clean the rim up here. Now, the other thing I will show, the final in this menagerie of products, the final thing I will show, Brian showed you guys this a little bit earlier, is the barbed bracken. I have a little bit of barbed bracken pre-painted already, but I don't actually have any of the big leaves pre-painted. I thought I did, and I got here today and found out I didn't.
When I did this, I airbrushed all of them on sprue. That's what you did too?
No, I do them on cork.
So I actually literally airbrushed 2 boxes of them on sprue, and then just put them back in my my drawer, and then I just cut them out when I need them.
That's funny. I usually do a big batch and keep them in like a container. The barbed bracken is great. All of these, like the vines that Citadel has are like this too, where they're like actually a little flexible.
Yeah, they are a little flexible.
Yeah, compared to like a basic model.
I actually find the flexibility is great because I can bend it up against like the leg of a model or something like that.
Yep. So I actually think I passed my clippers to Bridger. He's doing He's like
He's assembling Mega Gargants.
He's assembling Mega Gargants. So these guys actually pull off somewhat okay. And I'll just show you two real quick so that you guys can also see how my favorite hobby tool, I don't need a bridge, I'm okay, thank you though. How my favorite hobby tool, the cork, works. So all I'm gonna do is stick a couple of these to the cork and then paint them super fast with never using a brush. I'm gonna airbrush primer first, real fast. Oh man, the primer is gonna take forever to dry again. Definitely should have primed these ahead of time. Usually I do that. So hit them with a little bit of primer. I prime the back, by the way, guys, but I'm not gonna do anything else to the back. That's just in case, like for some reason you can see that angle, at least it's dark.
So basically I put all mine as like a dark green on the back and front, and then I just did highlights on the front of mine. That's kind of how I just did mine.
Yeah, oh, that's looking pretty good.
It's, my base here is, it's coming together a bit, but it's, I will say the wash was still a teeny bit wet. And so it's dulled down a tiny, tiny bit of what would have been the distinctive colors.
Oh, the
right?
ice.
It's blended a tiny bit more.
We can add that back.
Yeah,
though.
it's blended a tiny bit more than I would have wanted, but
Yeah.
it's generally come together. It looks like an icy, it's a little more icy of a base than the first one we've done. So the first one was a little more rocky, and this one's come out a little more icy.
That's gonna look great.
Yeah, I think it's gonna work. I think it's gonna work okay.
Okay, so for the barbed bracken, I have, like Brian was saying, I actually have like I'm more of an Apple ecosystem user, so I have a Pages document as opposed to a Google doc.
No way.
That has everything. But one of the, I use a few different colors, and then I also wash them a few different colors. But my process for the barbed bracken is I hit everything with like a dark green color first, which I don't actually, I don't have here. But the color I use is called Minotaur green. But I could use like a Reaper equivalent. So some of them I do that, and then I build up a little bit. Some of them also, and these are the ones I'm going to show you today, I paint in the same color that I paint my T'au. And so you can see this is actually GW paint. You can tell this is like my main army paint because it's GW paint put into one of these special bottles because I use so much of it. So what I do to paint these is I will hit them with like first like a medium kind of green. I typically use one that's called grass green from Minotaur, and this is like a very good equivalent, jade green. And so I just hit it with that, and I like to leave like dark, like, you know, gradient it a bit.
Yeah, right.
Let me make sure it's sticking here. So I gradient this a bit. Get my window caulk nice and sticky. It has too much paint. Okay, there we go. So I gradient it a little bit. You can see I'm leaving the center darker with first the jade green, and then I'm going to hit it with a little bit of the Cerebite green. And Games Workshop, like this color is so great because it's like, I don't know. There's something like the way that Games Workshop makes these colors.
Yeah, they do have some nice paints.
Where
Absolutely.
where it's like jade green. It's like the Reaper calls it jade green, Minotaur calls it grass green, and it's like this really nice, like, I don't know, almost pastel, getting like verging pastel. But the Citadel one is Cerebite green. And there's just like, it's just like got a little more blue than everybody else. There's like something that they always do to their paint.
Yeah,
where it's like
it's not just normal.
Exactly, like everyone's selling this color.
It's magicked it out a little bit. Somehow,
right, exactly. They're like, let's take
More
this color and add a little bit of yellow to it.
Yeah,
or like that's what moot green is, right? Moot green
exactly.
is it's just like.
But it is without losing, like some of the other companies, it'll lose its vibrancy, you know, through the mixing. Whereas the moot green keeps its extreme vibrancy. And it's very vibrant, very saturated.
Yeah.
But it's not a perfect green. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm really into it.
And the same thing kind of goes here with this Cerebite green. Even on the brown paper here, you can see as I put it down next to the grass green. You might not be able to see.
Yeah, it's coming through a little dark. But yeah.
But it's I don't know. There's just like this blueness to it that I love. And this is the color of my T'au, and that matters because that's why my T'au are this color.
Yeah, you're saying they're intentionally camouflaging themselves to that. And you play actually a very stealthy Taucept, you play like Dileth, which is
sometimes.
you know but that's what that was the spirit behind your army, right?
That was the spirit
behind your
army. And I do love stealth suits, and I love ghost kills. But
it's a heavy part of your army.
If you're doing this, right? So this is like a big point of advice I would give. We were talking about this earlier. We were saying about how like when people who've been in like older people who've been in World War II or Korea or something like that, they see like how stuff looks. They're like, oh, the guns are bright in silver,
right?
And they're like, you know, actually they painted the guns,
right?
So you couldn't see them, right? Like the big like artillery pieces. When you camouflage, if you work in camouflage into your base,
right?
Do not. My recommendation is like this is a gray base, right? If you pick this up, you'd say your base is gray.
Yeah.
Do not put a gray army on a gray base.
No.
You want to find like
definitely not.
And honestly, the greens that I've dry brushed over this aren't even Cerebite green, which is what I use for my T'au. But I specifically color some of the barbed bracken that color.
Yeah, but not the whole base.
Not the whole base.
Because then the model will get lost.
And in fact, a lot of my T'au don't even have a barbed bracken that's Cerebite green.
You don't necessarily, because it could get a little played out when every model has one of these, especially because these are, even the smallest one is pretty big. And in the bracken, I don't know how you feel, but the smallest pieces of bracken, I don't actually think they're nice.
I don't use them.
I only like the fern.
use them. Yeah, the fern.
I only like the little fern, and it's pretty large. So if you had it on every base, it's kind of overkill. So I definitely agree with that.
I do use the smaller ones, but like I have some
I use them selectively.
I usually curl them
I put them under
rock.
rocks. We do the same thing, let me show you what I'm doing as my next step here. I'm using a really cool product. Again, we talked about AK Terrain. This is their diorama kit, and this is their snow. Now, if you've ever tried to do snow, you'll know that there's lots of different products to do snow. I can't say that this is the best snow product, because it probably isn't, but it's a totally great one. And one of the things you'll find with AK is they typically have a small set. Sometimes it takes more than one to do the best job. So we have the terrain snow, and then the snow sprinkles. And so what this is kind of like a big scale snow, small scale snow. And I genuinely think you want both. And this will go a long way. Like if you own this would be all your armies forever. So I'm just gonna put a couple pieces of kind of thicker snow, and I'll again use a scraper to kind of put it on a little thick. So I'm gonna look for a spot where I think the snow would be, and I don't wanna kind of get in the way of my my icy bits.
Or where your Gargant's foots are gonna go.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
I just said foots. Or where your Gargant's feet are gonna go. But
that's true.
Why I said foots is because their feet are big. I actually did pull out the model and test it to make sure that it could go on the sample one I did earlier today.
Yeah.
And test it to make sure that like it wasn't gonna be stepping on the snow. Because if it's stepping on the snow, it's just gonna, I don't know, like the snow would reflect that, and I'm not reflecting that.
So this is where you have to be careful, because the texture, like if you put it on the same way you put on the rough terrain, it'll get this it'll start to look like meringue or whipped cream, and snow doesn't look like meringue. So you definitely want to be careful not to get those little peaks that you get in a whipped cream.
Yes.
Or a meringue. So you definitely, and a brush is going to give you much more control over that in the end. So you'll use this palette to put it on, but you probably want to finish it with a brush. Agree.
And we also kind of found, well, you'll see, we found that, like Brian was saying, using we're using the snow, the like thick clumps of snow, and then we're going to surround it with the snow flake, which is like a filmy kind of look. Yeah. Looks like it's been melting.
And I personally think, unless you have a really good reason for it, less is more with the snow. Don't do a lot of the snow unless that's your whole thing, because it can look really bad really fast.
What looks really good, and I'm going to have to try to replicate this. I'm sure GW in their Beastclaw Raiders used Valhalla snow, which is their technical, but they did absolutely coat the bottom.
And that can work. That can work. But that's a choice that you're like actually going to make an all snow base. But if you're just trying to add snow to an existing base, like do it just a little bit. I almost think of the snow like it's a tuft. You know, I'm putting the snow where I would put a tuft.
And I'll be honest, I don't know if there's a lot of middle ground.
Yeah.
Between like a lot of snow and a little bit of snow. Okay, Brian, when you get a chance, zoom in here. I'll show kind of my finishing up here. So I've got the barbed bracken on there. Here's the second one. I'm not going to put the second one on because it's too much. And actually, I think I don't know what I'm actually going to base with this base, because this is a crisis suit size, and I have plenty of crisis suits. Brett recently gifted me with a Cold Star, but I think the Cold Star is on a bigger base. Did I have that right?
It might be, and even if it's not, I like them on bigger bases.
Yeah, this is a little small for him. So I'm not sure I'm going to base what I'm going to put on this, but that's okay. Maybe an objective. I don't know. It's actually technically the final. Oh my God, so many products. The other thing I like to use on my T'au base, I use this clump foliage medium green from Scenic Express, and this just makes like little tiny. They're just. I mean, that's exactly what they are. They're clumps. They're little clumps of probably some horrible plastic that's going to end up in my lungs. But I just put.
Well, that's hobbying in a nutshell.
That's hobbying in a nutshell. And yeah. Again, like with a lot of stuff, I honestly, guys, speaking of clumps, I find that like if you have rocks or you have ruins or whatever, like I frequently clump up towards it. One, like that's kind of how things work frequently in nature. Like if there's water hitting this rock and then running off the rock, the area that, this area is getting all the water from when it rains, plus all the water that comes off the rock after the hours of it raining, right? So like frequently there's a little more around the rock, but also I need somewhere to put the model, right? So like the clump, now I have like this open space. I actually love to put my models asymmetrically on my bases too. I almost never put the model right in the middle. This base is going to be perfect for that because there's just like this whole side of the base right here is covered with a clump and a rock and barbed bracken. So the feet of whatever goes here are going to have to go right here. And I'm cool with that. Or maybe I can pose whatever it is, like if it's a crisis suit. Because I say I have plenty of crisis suits, but let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, I have, I think, 22, and I could use more.
I'll tell you, I had so many of the old ones, and then they released the new ones, and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and buy 6 of the new ones. And then those are the ones I painted up. And I have all the old ones, like, I had them in simple green, and I stripped them, and I primed them, and I have all of them. And I'm just like, of course, I'm eventually going to paint them all up, right? Like they're.
I have maybe 12 of the new and like 8 or so of the old.
I have so many.
The new ones are so much nicer.
And they are, and the old ones, like I didn't magnetize because I just wasn't thinking that way back then. Yeah. This is like when I first got into the hobby, right? So it's like here's my crisis suit with flamers, and like back in the day, missile plasma were good, and like everything's just like all wrong. So. I have a lot of bespoke old crisis suits.
My old crisis suits were also had glued models. If this was a piece of trivia for anyone who's watched my very, very first video on Tabletop Titans, but my first crisis suit the set I ever bought, I didn't really know, I didn't have the book. And so what I did is, in the crisis suit box, it comes with 1,000,000 guns. I thought you literally had to use all of them. So I put every single weapon, which is basically like 2 of every gun. And he has so many hard points, right? Like he's got like several on his arms, several on his shoulders. So I had like 12 guns on this one crisis suit. And I was like, looks like a little overkill, but he's pretty badass. And that was actually how I did my
Was that the old kit or the new kit?
That was old. That was when T'au first came out.
Okay.
So I had...
Wait, when T'au first came out?
Yeah.
That's forever ago.
That was, I started, so I was playing fantasy forever.
Okay.
And I never was interested in 40K because I like kind of that more clean army look.
Yes.
And I was playing a lot of elves, like high elves, wood elves, Bretonnians, things like that. And when the T'au came out, they had that kind of cleaner look that I was looking for. So that's kind of what brought me to try 40K. So yeah, it kind of worked for me.
Same. I don't know that I ever would have played. Oh, do you want me to?
No, it'll be fine.
Okay. I don't know that I ever would have played 40K if like there wasn't the T'au.
The
right?
T'au, yeah.
The
T'au's certainly what got me started.
Yeah. It's like a gateway, like a gateway army. I was just like, oh, okay, I can play grimdark stuff down the road.
So I'm just putting a final touch onto these bases here. So I've used both snows, and I'll just kind of talk you through what I did for a second here, which was I put the big snow down, and then I used a brush to kind of pat it, make a shape that I liked. And then I used the smaller snow, which was the snow sprinkles, and I essentially went around the edges a little bit, so where it's melting and kind of going in. And so Then I've got a few of the tufts at kind of spots. Not on. You don't put it on top of the snow because that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. You could put it inside the snow if you put it down first, or you leave a hole for yourself. So I put it in little gaps. So this base is a little more snowy than the last base, a little more icy, but that's just because that's how the paint came out, so I leaned into it a little more. And so the base kind of told its own story for me as I was going.
Yeah, that's it. Man, I think we.
I'll show
I think
these
we
two
did.
bases.
Yeah, put them on the glam cam together.
Yeah, I'll show you these two bases. So these are the two here. So one of them's a little more rocky, one of them's a little more snowy. This is about as snowy as I would go for this army, and the snowier base. But yeah, I haven't done the rim here, which we clean up pretty quick. Yeah.
Oh, does the rim need anything?
It does, yeah. It does need a bit of cleanup.
Okay,
It needs the Mechanicus gray.
That's like
outside.
what I have left to do. I'll put my guys down as well, since we're showing that.
Okay.
Because mine also need a little rim cleanup, which is a big thing, like for me, because again, the rim, I don't do black rims, so the rims matter a lot.
Yeah.
And so I need a little bit of cleanup here for both the T'au and the Asuryani one. But to be honest with you, I don't want to just sit here and clean up rim on base on stream because it's not the nicest
I'm doing
thing. Brian's doing it. But yeah, this is it. So one base at a time, like we did today on stream, is a little weird.
Not the most efficient.
Not the most efficient.
I've only ever done this before for like a character.
Like a single base, not a single base. Yeah. But I'm glad because now in a few weeks when we do our Wraith Lord, his base will already be finished. And I don't know what I'm going to use the T'au one for, but probably, like we said, another crisis suit. Probably like my...
You can always,
You can always add a crisis suit.
All right, rim is done. Got it finished.
Yeah.
It's not a big job.
Awesome. Brian, I think we did it.
I think we did it.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
Let's talk about what is happening in the sister networks in the coming weeks, in the coming week.
Yeah, because really, in this particular week, we've got almost more happening than we do in weeks. If you haven't heard already, we keep telling everyone we have a big week going on this week and a special marathon stream happening this Friday and Saturday. So happening first on Friday here on Hobby Titans, we're going to be here at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we're going to be here all day painting a Mega Gargant's army. This is 3 of the large Mega Gargants, so 1 of each. Okay. And then 3 of the small, regular kind of giants. Man Crushers, that's right. And so that'll be a full, exactly 2,000 point army. And we're actually painting other stuff along the way, kind of working on a few other models. And we're going to have a bunch of the different hosts from the Titans Network kind of here. Yep. So it's going to be a great time to come, hang out with us, hobby all day, get your big project finished. And then see how we do. This is the first time we've ever done something this long, and it's the first time I've done an army in a day in a while. I've done it before, but it's an army in a day. And as you can see, these bases that we were doing today, the ones that I was doing here, these snowy bases, this is the giant army. And so just off camera here, you can see I started putting the basing material down for the Mega Gargants. These are huge bases.
They're huge.
I don't even know what the size is here, but it's a big base, and so we've got all 3 of those, and these are the 3 smaller bases. So we've got the bases started, at least, but we're going to have to repeat this process on Friday.
No? Well,
we'll have to finish.
On those ones. Yeah.
And then Friday is just the start of it, because on Saturday, over on Tabletop Titans, we're going to be, again, doing 10 a.m. Pacific time all day. We're going to be playing 3 games. 2 of them are 40K games, so we've got a 40K game in the morning, which is going to be a lot of fun. I think that actually is lining up to be me and Adrian. And so we're still working on the lists and things like that. But our second game is going to be Zach and Bridger, and they're going to be playing the Mega Gargants that were just completed against some other big Age of Sigmar models. So we're going to have lots of kind of big monsters on the board. Ton of fun there. And then our third game for the day is going to be Jonathan and Brett, and we're going to be playing Maelstrom for the first time. Yeah. So tons and tons of fun stuff to look forward to there.
Excited for these games. We're calling the Jonathan Brett game the Tall Boy game.
Oh yeah, that's right. We'll have to zoom out the cameras a little bit.
Zoom the camera out.
Just to get it. We should have a mode. We just push in, it's like just zooms out 10%.
Jonathan Brett game.
Yeah, that's right. So and then of course that's on top of our typical stream coming up on Thursday. So it's just Warhammer all the time. From here on out, no sleep, no time to eat, It's just hobbying and warhammering, which is how it's how we live here over on Titans.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, I think that's it. I'm excited. Thank you, Brian, for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, guys, reminding you, as always, be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, and always be creating. See ya.
Bye.